Welcome everybody to this Yes Orkney online event. We've got Patrick Goulet here all the way from Quebec, and given the kind of scenario that we're facing in the UK as a whole at the moment, with rising energy prices, and I was reading somewhere today that The Guardian had got a hold of a script that the BBC have secretly been preparing in the event of blackouts, and there's lots of debates about warm banks and things like that, and businesses having to shut because they don't have enough energy, or they don't have enough revenue to keep using the level of energy that they need. Now is a good time to be discussing alternative ways that we can manage our energy system. So Patrick addressed a meeting of Orkney Renewable Energy Forum earlier this year, and I think a few of us certainly felt that the whole area around how to nationalise an energy system and the pros and cons around that were worth looking at again in some depth. And Patrick's saying that there's a few very new bits of information that he's got around things to do with Hydro Quebec too that he's going to go over. So without any further ado, I think I'll just hand over now to Patrick.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Good evening, everyone. It's good afternoon for me, and welcome to my beautiful home. This is beautiful downtown Montreal, right here, right behind me. It's a solar project that I worked on. It was really nice working on that roof because we had this wonderful view of downtown Montreal and the Mont Royal that's on the other side this way. Anyway, I'm gonna start right now. Who's Patrick? Well, I'm going to go very fast on that. I finished school in 1979 at a technical college and specialized in civil engineering. I was 20 years old, and my first job was the great project of James Bay. They called it the project of the century. It was up north. If you look at the map of Quebec, it's Hudson's Bay, and right under there, it's James Bay. And it was huge, big. I mean, really, really big. There was up to 14,000 workers up there at the peak. There was a lot of dams, a few. There was at that time 3 big hydro generating stations, and it was a wonderful place for someone who just finished college and first job. It was really fun. I was flying in helicopters, and I even had my own 4x4. It was pretty cool, and I had a lot of hair also. And a little bit further down the road, I started to work at Hydro Quebec. I was we call it inspector or supervisor of the construction sites. But my main function was to make sure that all the construction was according to the plans, and always doing public relations with the contractor and the clients also, and taking care of the security, because we were often working in live substations from very low voltage to like this one here, 735 kV. You have to be really careful working in a live substation. So that's mainly my career. The last 15, 20 years, I stopped working in construction sites and started to work at the office as a cost estimator, planification, and project management in substations. I decided to accept the offer to work in the office because I was newly daddy. I was my first child, and I didn't want to work out somewhere in the remote areas, because usually when you work at Hydro Quebec, it's a lot of remote areas where you work. So I decided to stay in Montreal instead and live my fatherhood. I'm also president of Énergie Solaire Québec. It's a non-profit organization that promotes and explains to the grand public what is solar energy and renewables in general, but mostly solar energy. I've created this website here where it's a directory where you can find all the installers and consultants specializing in solar energy. It was to help the public finding and contractors in solar. Okay, the province of Quebec, well, it's the biggest province of Canada. Okay, the surface area is 1.5 million square kilometers. That's very, the most northern part is at 62 degrees latitude, and the most southern part is 45 degrees latitude. Quebec has one of the largest freshwater reserves on the planet, covering 12% of the surface of the land and 3% of Earth's renewable freshwater. We have a lot of water. That's why we use hydro for energy. We have lots of water. The population is 8.5 million, mostly living on the south in the valley of the St. Lawrence. That's where it's the warmest, and the rest of the province is really cold. French is the common language. Anglo community is 650,000, about that. First Nations is 359,000. Quebec is founded on Westminster system and is both a liberal democracy and a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary regime. It's the government style government is it's more social democracy. We like to compare ourselves to the Scandinavian countries. We're pretty much social democracy, and also when we have the type of political parties here in Quebec are mostly center, left center, right center, but no extreme. There's only one extreme, and they never, nobody votes for them anyway, so we won't count them. Okay, the economy, well, it's manufacturing and service sectors dominate the economy. Quebec is ranked 33rd largest economy in the world, just behind Norway. That's why we like to compare ourselves to the Scandinavians. It is also ranked the 21st largest OECD. The economy represents 20% of the total GDP of Canada. Export to UK, it's 2.6%, and imports 7.9%. You can see all the places we are, the economic sectors here in Quebec. It's mostly about, it compares to Scotland and UK, anywhere in the OECD countries. Okay, nationalization, how it all started. Well, it didn't start in Quebec, it started in Ontario. It was Sir Adam Beck who was the instigator of really pushing to give a jump start of nationalization. So they really gained momentum here in Ontario. Quebec started to be inspired of it because they had the same problems as in Ontario, and they were doing whatever they wanted to do. Okay, they didn't listen to no one. They really hiked up the electric bills and all that. People were really complaining, and it was hindering the economic development of the provinces. So that's why Ontario said that's enough, and we're going to nationalize. And Quebec, when Adélard Godbout came into power in 1939, he was very inspired of nationalization, and after a lot of turmoil and debates at the National Assembly on the 14th of April 1944, the Legislative Assembly of Quebec adopts a law creating Hydro-Quebec. The next day, they took over Montreal Light, Heat and Power. The next day, really fast. The reason why they started with Montreal, there was a big concentration of population there, and they needed to have lower cost of electricity and also a grid and a distribution network that was more durable. And so the first thing they done is they lowered the cost of electricity to everyone. So that was the first thing. In the same year, in 1944, a new party came into power. There was elections, and it was Maurice Duplessis, who was the new prime minister. And he wasn't very keen with nationalization. He was more, he didn't like the government intervening into the private sector. So instead of pursuing nationalization, what he did instead is help the rural regions to create their own cooperative or municipalities, also their own distribution network. Instead of giving that to the private sector, what they did is create their own distribution. And so it was a kind of form of nationalization. It's not the production that was nationalized, but the distribution. So they already had a control about that part, the distribution. But from 1944 to 1962, even if Maurice Duplessis didn't went into pursuing the nationalization of the production, Hydro-Quebec was building more and more generating hydro generators. From 1944, there was 616 megawatts of production. And in 1962, we were up to 3,661 megawatts. So we were really pushing hard into production, and that was government owned. All those dams built by Hydro-Quebec, it was publicly owned. And the reason why they were doing this also is that because they lowered the cost of electricity, there was more people using it. And that means that you have to produce more. So the downfall of, again, I'm going to talk about it a little bit further down the road, but the downfall of having cheap electricity is people consume it more. So you have to be careful about cheap electricity. Okay, in 1960, the Quebec Liberal Party took office. It was, the Prime Minister was Jean Lesage. And Jean Lesage government that was the period that we called in Quebec la Révolution tranquille, the quiet revolution. That's when the French Québécois were more and more taking control of the province, because you have to go back into history. It was more the English people, the Canadian English, who were controlling a lot of stuff in the province, and the French Canadian were beginning to take more and more power. And when Jean Lesage came into power, that's when the quiet revolution started. It was our turn now. That's about it. And so what he did with René Lévesque is that they decided that all the new hydro projects will be solely done by Hydro-Quebec. No more private companies. That's it. So they passed a legislation at the assembly, and they said no more permits for private sector. Only Hydro-Quebec is going to develop hydro generating stations. So René Lévesque was the minister for Hydro-Quebec and the natural resources. And he was really into it in nationalization, because René Lévesque was ambitious. He wanted to buy everybody, and let's get rid of the private sector and let's control the whole thing, because the natural resources, it belongs to the people. That's how he. So when René Lévesque had the mandate of taking, administrating and taking Hydro-Quebec, well, he wanted to know if it was feasible to buy everyone. There was 11 companies in the province at that time. So he wanted to know, can we buy this? Is it feasible? So he gave the mandate to Roland Giroux and Jacques Parizeau to go down to New York and see the financiers there with the packaging of their project of buying out everyone. They were accompanied by Michel Bélanger, who was a senior civil servant. He was a very high ranking, right under the minister right there. So the three guys, they went down, the three amigos, they went down there, and they talked to the Americans to see, hey, can we do this? Can we buy everyone? And the answer was yes, and it's feasible, and you're gonna make money out of it also. So they said, oh, right, this is good. So when they came back, they gave the whole thing to René Lévesque, and René Lévesque went to see the Prime Minister, Jean Lesage, and Jean Lesage, his answer was, over my dead body. He really said that to René Lévesque, over my dead body. He wasn't very keen into buying everyone. It was like a really, we're talking big here, a lot of money. So he challenged René Lévesque. He said, okay, go to the public and explain to everyone to see the reaction of the population if everyone was ready to do this, because it's a big investment, really big money. So René Lévesque just went out and campaigned for nationalization. He and René Lévesque, I met him personally when he was a prime minister, because he became prime minister of Quebec. He was a very convincing person, really convincing person. So the 4th and 5th of September 1962, a secret cabinet meeting was held. Main subject was nationalization, and René Lévesque had to convince the whole cabinet and the prime minister to buy out everyone and control the whole resource at 100%. So it lasted 2 days, and René Lévesque, who is a very convincing person, won his cause, and they decided to go ahead and nationalize everyone, buy everyone out. But to be sure that the public would be okay with that, they decided to call an election right in the middle of the mandate. It's a 4-year mandate. They were there only for 2 years, and they called up an election just for that, just to make sure that everyone was clear for everyone, where if you vote for us, we're going and buy 11 companies. That's what we're going to do. And the slogan, I like to show you the slogan. That's really the real slogan in those days was "Maintenant ou jamais." And translated in English, it's now or never. And maître chez nous means master of our home, or master of our future, or master of our destiny, something like that. So that was the slogan for the election, and the election was solely on nationalization. In November 1962, they won, and it was a landslide. They took up 56% of the assembly of all there was 95 seats, and they took 56% of the 95 seats. And there was 80% of participation at that election. 80%, that's enormous. If you compare to today, people don't go vote anymore that much. At 80% was a big, very high participation. So René Lévesque, they forged ahead, and they made an offer to buy all the 11 companies for the sum of $604 million. That's a lot of money in those days. They bought everyone, cooperatives, distribution, municipality distribution also. There was only a few pockets of municipalities that didn't accept the offer. They decided to stay as is. And one company, Alcan, who's Rio Tinto today, aluminum smelter, they had their own hydro generator, so it wasn't for sale at all. They kept it. So that's about the state of it. Today, it's the same thing. What the nationalization brought to the province is a stable network. They started to refurbish and really standardize everything, okay? Transmission lines, distribution, everywhere in the province. And also everywhere, there were still rural in pockets, regions that didn't have any electricity, even in 1962. So they started to really roll out all the lines and everywhere to give electricity to everyone. And the price was flat rate. I mean, the same price for everyone anywhere. That means like if you were in Orkney, okay, Orkney, if it was in Quebec, but you would pay the same thing I'm paying here in Montreal, the same price, okay? The price is right everywhere. That's it, okay? It was social democracy. We said yes, and it was fair and square for everyone, okay? That's it. So if someone it's too costly over there, it doesn't matter. You're gonna pay the same price. We're gonna absorb the difference. That's the deal for a national, the way we sold it to the public. Also, the other thing is when you're big, well, you have more means to do big projects, and you're really sitting on a big asset. The asset we're sitting on is something like $82 billion or something like that. I'm not sure, but when you have a big asset, it's easy to knock on the door and get some money to do a mega project like James Bay or Manic, like the picture right here. It makes a big difference, okay? Well, the profits, they all come back into the province, okay? They don't go somewhere else. They stay in the province. So that's another interesting thing of being a monopoly. Today, Hydro-Quebec, it's 61 hydro generating stations. It's 37.2 gigawatts. The facilities also include 28 large reservoirs with a combined storage capacity of over 176 terawatt hour. Just to give you an example, with the reservoir, all the reservoir of water we have stocked up, we have enough power for 1 year in that battery for the whole province. We can generate without rain, nothing, no, just to empty the reservoir you have for a year, okay? We have a 1 year battery up there. So it's big, it's really big. There's also 681 dams and 91 control structures somewhere in the province. 262,000 kilometers of transmission lines and distribution lines, 533 substations, 15 cross-border interconnections. Our ambition is to become the battery of Eastern North America. So because the Americans are at the border with the provinces, also the maritime provinces, Ontario and the New England, they're investing a lot into renewable energy, solar and wind. And the problem with that type of renewable is that you're not always need the electricity generated from those type of renewables. So what we can do is shoot up all the energy up in the province, in our province, and we just stop some turbines and stock up the water to be the battery of the rest of America, Eastern America. So that's the strategy we're offering with our next door neighbors. Also, Hydro-Quebec is investing massively into charging stations for electric cars. We're really pushing hard to do the transition to electric mobility. And there's something like 149,000 electric cars in the province. It's 44% of all electric cars in Canada. We're the one who's buying the most. And in Canada, there's something like 348,000 electric cars. We have 3,700 public charging stations and another 4,000 private charging stations. There's 833 fast charging stations. Subsidies for electric cars in Quebec is $7,000 and for $5,000 from the Canadian government. The only problem now in Quebec is, well, it's in Canada as a whole, is the waiting list to have an electric car. I mean, it's really insane. It's still insane. The last time I talked about it in Northney, I said a year and a half to 2 years. There's even longer wait for a car here. Also, Hydro-Quebec offers subsidies for heat pumps. 2,000 up to $2,800 of subsidy for heat pumps, changing your gas or oil system to heat pump. They offer a subsidy for that. That's the implication, the economic implication they give here in Quebec. Also, there's also a program where if you have a central heating system, gas or oil, you can have this system that is a thermal storage device that they give you a $10,000 subsidy to change to a thermal storage system. That's another program that Hydro-Quebec offers to the public. There's also AI, artificial intelligence, ILO. That's a more, they come and install thermostats and intelligent artificial intelligence to help you control all your consumption in the house. And everything is going to be, everything is related with the central system of Hydro-Quebec. So they can turn off for a few minutes your hot water heater or things like that. That's what they want to do. And they're going to offer a little bit further down the road storage, battery storage also. It's all a program to try to help people to consume less energy, because I'm going to talk about it a little bit further, where we're going to hit a wall soon about what we can consume in energy. This here, I discovered this not too long ago, a few weeks, and it's New Brunswick, our next door neighbor, the province of New Brunswick. They offer free heat pumps to low-income households. Okay, and I've listened to Rob Flett, his program about the problem you have in Orkney and elsewhere in Scotland also, and even in England, the energy and heating problem also. And here they came up with, it's even more generous than my province. When I saw that, I said, shoot, yeah, we should do this here in Quebec also. So it's specifically for very low income households. They're gonna give you the heat pump, literally. Okay, if you fill up the form and you have the requirement to have this, you're gonna have your own heat pump. They all changed the program. You can do a little bit of research in internet, and you will find the program at the New Brunswick government. And they explain the whole thing and how it works. But this is really good. Okay, the other thing, the news in Hydro-Quebec lately, we just bought in the United States, because we have a subsidiary in the United States. Hydro-Quebec is a company also in the United States. We're a partner with another American company there. And we bought for $2 billion 13 hydro generating dams in the New England region. And it's the equivalent of almost 600 megawatts of generation. So Hydro-Quebec is positioning itself in New England to sell also energy. We're already selling energy, but now they bought this. It was a surprise to everyone, and even I was surprised when I saw that. So Hydro-Quebec, that's the other advantage of being big. You have a lot of money, and you sit on this big asset. So it's not a problem to get $2 billion and buy something. You know, they really, that's what they're doing, and they're still watching for other deals in North America, especially in North America. It's interesting because Hydro-Quebec is a public company, so we're benefiting, the whole province is going to benefit with this purchase we've done in the United States. The other thing here, that's the line that we're going to bring down to New York City. We have a contract that is already signed, and we're going to build with the American partner on the American side a 545 kilometer long underwater and underground power line to bring energy to New York City. It's a 1,250 megawatts of energy that we have a contract already signed that we're gonna guarantee to New York City. So this is another type of what we can do when we have the means to be able to sell our energy and also be partners. Hydro-Quebec likes to be partners always with the other countries or places they go. They're really not into buying things and be the big guy. It's always partnering with someone and sharing the profits and all that. We're going to be in turmoil in Quebec soon if we don't do something about it, because they say, according to Hydro-Quebec and other experts, that from here on to 2050, we're going to have a deficit of energy of 100 terawatt hours. That's because of our cheapness of electricity. That's why I want to come down to cheap electricity equals too much consumption. I worked at Hydro for 30 years and I'm always saying that we're paying it too cheap and people are not observing conservation, and that's the downfall, okay, of cheap electricity. It has to be reasonable, that's okay, but it doesn't have to be cheap. And we're paying now for this. They're talking of modulating the kilowatt hour. That means that at peak times, it's like you have elsewhere on the planet, at peak moments, the electricity is more expensive. And when you're out of the peak moments, it gets a little less expensive. And now they're doing that here, and it's about time. At the end of the day, I mean, you're letting passing water, and water is going to be another precious thing to conserve. So it's another half of Hydro-Quebec that you have to build. Hydro-Quebec right now they're generating 200 terawatt hour of energy every year. And now they're talking another 100, another half Hydro-Quebec. That's about what it represents. So they have to start conservation campaigns, and we're going to have to find other ways of generating, because the other thing is that hydro, if you want to do a hydro project, well, it's not like, okay, let's do a hydro project and it's going to take 1 year and we're done. No, it's a very long process. It can be 10 to 15 years because you have to study the river, look at, and now you have to deal with the First Nations. There's people living around there, and they've got nature environment and the environment. You have to, it's really complicated. It has become, and it's more popular than it used to be here in Quebec. So now we're looking more at conservation, other forms of renewables, wind, especially wind, solar. We're going to try to find the 100 terawatt hour without hydro. That's going to be a big challenge here. You have to be careful how much you sell your kilowatt hour. That's the bottom line of what the consequences of having cheap electricity. And then you cannot turn back. No, you have to educate everyone to be careful with the energy they use. Other thing that Hydro-Quebec they do, they partner a lot with the communities, the First Nation and the Inuit community. Like this example here is that they partnered with the Inuit, because we have 22 communities in Quebec who are depending on diesel generators to have electricity. So that's all up north and the Magdalen Islands that I'm going to talk about it a little bit further. But what they just signed a historic clean energy partnership with the Inuit. Now that means that they're going to have wind turbines to try to diminish the consumption of diesel in the generating stations that they have there, the pockets of the 22 communities. So it has started. They're really partnering with these people. This is Sophie Brochu. She's the CEO of Hydro-Quebec. And she came out of her, I can say she done a coming out. She said, we must not seek to become the $1 store of electricity in the world. And that's because of our cheap electricity. We have this problem now. There's a big waiting list of big companies. They all want to come here in the province because we have cheap electricity. So the CEO, she came out and said, that's enough, okay? We're not the $1 store of energy here, okay? And we're gonna choose the companies that are gonna come here. They have to have the requirements that we want. It's gonna come touch the environment and all kinds of stuff. But now that's the industry here in Quebec. They said that she went too far when she said that. That's not true that we're here for cheap electricity. And they're trying to defend themselves. Now we have this little competition between Hydro-Quebec and the industry who say that we're not that bad guys, okay? And the Prime Minister has also getting involved into this because the ultimate boss of Sophie Brochu is the Prime Minister of Quebec. So, but she's a very independent person, and I like her very much because she's really saying the things that we should say about the energy. And she like her because she's like a free electron. So nobody controls her, and I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, what about solar and wind? Well, let's talk about wind first. Okay, we have these are all the wind farms that we have here in the province. There's for 3,879 megawatts. There's another 400 that's going to be added soon. They just closed up the call to tender for wind farms. And there's also a little small 35 megawatt solar park that's going to be built also. But there's another 3,000 megawatts that's coming soon, call to tender for also renewables. It's going to be mostly wind farms, but a little bit of solar, but not that much. Solar, okay, let's talk about solar in Quebec. Solar in Quebec, the penetration is very slow. If you look at the picture here, the two solar parks, they were built by Hydro-Quebec, and they're using it more or less for experimentation. They want to see how it reacts on the network and all that. They have batteries and they're playing with it. It's only 10 megawatts. I mean, it's just puny. It's very small. And the problem that because why the penetration of solar in Quebec is slow is because electricity is cheap. So it slows down the penetration, and that's too bad because it's really a technology that's very trying to find the word in English. Whatever, it's very good. And the cheapness of electricity, we're going to talk about it a little bit further down. I'm going to show you something, my electric bill. So just to give you an example, the net metering started in 2006 and we're in 2022, and there's only 741 houses, buildings that are connected to the grid with their solar. That's really, really not much. 70 to 90% of what's being installed in solar in the province is off-grid. There's some installation that you can see here in the pictures, the Phoenix, that's the one right behind me. I worked on that one. It's 160 kilowatt, okay, they're on grid. The farm here, the 43 kilowatt also, and you have Simon's 1.2 megawatts, they're all on grid. But there's not a lot of those type of installation here in Quebec. Okay, the nitty and gritty. There's 22 small power grids that are generated by diesel power generators. And Hydro-Quebec, they started to modify all this because they wanted to bring down the consumption of diesel. It's very expensive to bring up diesel. If you look at the places up here, okay, this is very far, okay, it's very expensive bringing up a boat there to bring diesel. and you cannot go there in the wintertime, only in the summertime, and the window is not very long. It's something like 3 months, 2 months, not more. So they have to really hurry up, bring up all the fuel, and come back down. So Hydro-Quebec, they want to install and go renewable with all those communities. And they just starting. It's really they're late, but at least they have started. So the Maggies are the worst gang. In the 22 communities, Magdalen Islands, that they are situated right in the middle of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. They're the community that the generator is the worst. It's 40% of all the GHG is the generator of Magdalen Islands. Beautiful place. It's a copy, it's almost a copy of Orkney, but smaller, very small. It's not as big as Orkney. Okay, this is the monster that consumes and pollutes the region. It's a 67 megawatt generator, and it gives out 40% of all the GHG emissions of Hydro-Quebec. And Hydro, they want to stop this. Their vision of giving renewable clean energy to Magdalen Islands, they started with the wind turbines they installed, and there's another project that's coming along that's almost approved with the community, and they're going to install another 8 megawatts of wind farm. Also, people are very sensitive because they don't have that much space, and they're very sensitive of installing big wind turbines like that because they're afraid of the destruction of a few flowers, that very rare flowers and things like that that's living on the island. It's an exceptional region, so they have to go slowly with these projects. But I'm pushing with other groups at the regulatories that Magdalen Islands should be renewable that way, with solar also and storage also, not a cable like this here. Because Hydro-Quebec, what they want is to bring in a 225 kilometer long, 2 cables, direct current, okay, DC, with 2 substation inverter substations. That's what they want to do. We're talking more than $1 billion project for just 12,000 people. It's very expensive, and the risks are there. Just to give you an example of how risky it can be now, if you follow the news, Fiona, the hurricane, passed through the Maritimes in Canada, and the Magdalen Islands were really hard hit. And this is what it looks. Someone that sent me a picture of who lives there at Magdalen Islands. That was her backyard. Okay, she lost a big chunk of it by the sea after Fiona passed. And there's a lot of places around the Maritimes in Canada, also New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland. They really lost a lot of land because of the hurricane, and it's getting worse and worse for those people. But a cable like this is very risky if you have erosion like that. So renewable is the best way to go to be able to go through a big storm like Fiona did. And another example, I don't have a slide for that, but it's in Florida. I don't know if you read that, but there's a community in Florida when they got hit by not Fiona, but the other one this year. And the community is off-grid. They have a big solar park. And when the hurricane passed through, nobody lost power. And it just proves how renewables are very resilient. Okay, now I want to share with you my electric bill. Just to give you an idea how it works. I don't know in England or in Scotland how they send you the bill and everything, but this is an example. I just want to, it's all in French, sorry about that, but I'm going to explain to you this part here, okay? This is, they explained to me that from this year, the 1st of April, the inflation, okay, they hiked 2.6%. Okay, it's not 10%, 15% like I hear elsewhere. Okay, no. The government said no more than 4%. That's it. Okay, so it's 2.6%. That's the hike I got. Okay, that's the hike everyone got in the province. So here, when they send you the bill, it's every 60 days. They're going to tell you all your consumption and how much it's going to cost and how much it costs you. I'm on a program that's a flat rate. I mean, I pay a monthly fee, always the same monthly fee. And at the end of the year, if I consume less, then I get a credit. Or if I consume more, they're going to readjust my fee, my monthly fee. That's how it works with Hydro-Quebec. And here, if you look at my consumption from the 15th of February to the 31st of March, okay, I had 3,691 kilowatt hours. And from the 1st of April to the 13th of April, because the inflation that was the hike of the cost, it was 678 kilowatts for that period. When you look here how it works, okay, when we nationalized in the deal they presented to the population in 1962, okay, there was they call it the patrimoine. I don't know in English how I would refer or translate this, the patrimoine, but the first 40 kilowatt hours per day is at 6 cents. 6 cents. That's the first kilowatt hour. The first 40 kilowatt hour, I mean, not the first one, the first 40 kilowatt hour consumption is at 6 cents. After that, you're gonna switch for the rest of the consumption. It's 9 kilowatt hours. 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, I'm sorry. And the first 40 kilowatt hours of consumption is 6 cents. So if you have solar and you generate enough, okay, you probably gonna stay into that 6 cents of instead of the 9 cents. I think you follow me. Okay, I'm gonna answer the questions right now. If there are some questions right now, I'm gonna answer them just to make sure that you understood a bit my electric bill.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody that's got questions, my first reaction is that even though it's in French, it's far simpler to understand than a UK bill. Even though the regulator told companies to simplify them in the last few years, they can still appear very complex and difficult to understand for consumers. But I don't know if anybody's got any questions on.
Yeah, I'm maybe just a clarification. The interesting thing to me is that you pay more for higher consumption. You don't pay less because you're using more.
Exactly.
I think is really interesting because that's obviously going to help to head towards net zero.
Well, yes. I'm gonna just to go to a little bit further. You're gonna see a little bit more the rest of the what is charged to us. Okay, so the first, well, like I explained, the first 40 kilowatt hour is 6 cents. After that, you change to 9 cents for the rest of your consumption. And after that, you pay for the network fee, they call it. So it's, if you go down here, it's 4 cents, 42 cents per day. Okay, that's per day. That's the network fee, they call it like that. And after that, well, you have the taxes and all that down here, that's added up. If you look at my consumption for a whole year, okay, the whole year I consume for 18,108 kilowatt hour of electricity. That's for the whole year. Okay, you have to keep in mind that in Quebec, winter, it's damn cold. Well, I mean, it's minus 25 for a few weeks. Okay, so it's really cold. So we heat electric. I use electricity to heat my house. So it gives you the average here. last year, that was in 2022. We didn't have a very harsh winter because the average is -1 for the February to April. It was really not a hard winter. And if you look at 2021, -9 here. Okay, you have the average of the temperature. They give you the average, so you can see when you're heating a lot or not that much. But at the bottom line of all this, okay, with the network access fees plus federal and provincial taxes, the cost per kilowatt is 10 cents. For the equivalent of you people, 7 pence. This is how much I pay for a whole year per kilowatt hour. It's 7 P's for you people. So that's how cheap it is. It's still cheap. And that's all for my presentation. Any questions?
I'm still trying to get over the shock of how cheap that is, but I can see why consumption would be high at that kind of rate, because I think the only tariff that I can think of that had a unit cost, anything like that, would have been the heating rate of what we call total heating, total control. So the heating rate on that was probably about 7 pence in about 2011, and it's probably something near 20 pence or more now. I should know it off the top of my head, but yeah, so we're paying about 3 times your rate for the cheapest electricity to use for storage heating at the moment. It's maybe even higher than that at the moment now. Fiona Graham's got her hand up there. I'll let you ask away, Fiona.
Yeah, I'm interested in these northern areas that are harder to reach. And I wondered if you could expand on if there's resistance there to moving from oil to electric, if people are reluctant to do that. And I also wondered about the Magdalen Islands, if tidal energy had been considered, and if not, why? And further on those kind of themes, about house insulation, are these houses in northern regions given extra funding for insulating their homes better? Thank you.
That's a lot of questions. Woo! Okay, we're going to start with the resistance for changing from oil, gas to electricity. Well, there's no resistance at all. People are just really moving on that. Just to give you an example, Fiona, Hydro-Quebec, they like to do partnership. It's in their genes to partner with everyone, and they partnered with Énergie, who is the supplier of natural gas, and they said, okay, we want to really put down the GHG here in Quebec. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to go to your clients who are still using natural gas, and we're going to convert them to electricity. And we're going to use the technology that's called bi-energy. That means that they're going to use gas when it's really too damn cold to use electricity, and it's very not a good idea to use electricity. When it gets too cold, electricity is less efficient in central systems. So they're going to use gas. So they signed a deal together that Hydro-Quebec is going to compensate. That's very controversial. Okay, I'm here in Quebec about this deal, but the thing is that when they're going to compensate Énergie, the gas company, the money they're losing because they're switching to electricity to heat. And they're going to just sell gas when it's really needed, because the performance of gas is better. The heat you get out of it is more performing when it's really cold here in Quebec. So this is what they've done for gas. Oil is another story. Oil is really, we're getting rid of it, okay? And we're really switching, like the storage, thermal storage you just saw, that's one of the programs that Hydro-Quebec is pushing. So people will abandon central heating with oil to go with storage instead. The storage is electric. So when we're going to have a modulated a cost at peak time, well, you're going to be able to store your heat in that battery for the peak times, and it's going to cost you less. And Hydro-Quebec is investing in that. They're pushing a lot in storage, in thermal storage. And the other question after that was Magdalen Islands. What was it again? I'm sorry.
It was about if tidal energy had been considered for the island.
That's a good question, because I asked the question to Neil Kermode. Because you have to understand that we have a winter, like I said before, it's really damn cold. And there's an ice pack all around the island of Magdalen. It's the Gulf of St. Lawrence gets clogged up by ice in the wintertime. Less and less, because now because of global warming, there's less and less ice, but there's still ice in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So tidal energy with ice in the winter, it doesn't work very fine. So it's not, they tried some tidal energy little systems at Magdalen Islands. I know that they've done it, but the problem is winter. I mean, we have ice pack, it's really big, and it won't work. And I asked at the EMEX Center, the expert in the tidal energy over there, that's what Neil said to me. He said, "Oh, you're gonna have to take it out in the wintertime, because that won't work under ice." It's the problem of the winter. And the other question was something about insulation and all that in the houses. That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we have big programs here, subsidies to insulate houses already, and we're pushing hard to change there's a lot of pressure on the government to change the code, the building codes here, because the building codes here are not adequate with winter, and we're really pushing to go have passive technology houses, and the way the techniques of building houses. But for now, we have subsidies for, there's a federal program, provincial program, and even Hydro-Quebec has a program for insulation in houses here in the province.
Yeah, I think that's certainly an area that there seems to be a bit of consternation in the UK, probably quite rightly, that you know, I think we went through a time in the pandemic when everybody got excited about sustainability and it was going to be the new buzzword, and we thought that, you know, a new green revolution, including huge amounts of retrofitting, was going to be the name of the game, but it hasn't quite materialised. But I don't see anybody at the moment with any more hands up, but I was just being a hoarder here, I have the latest electricity price update for the north of Scotland that came out at the start of October from a colleague of mine that works in Loch Skye area, and right enough, the cheapest electricity unit for heating, for total heating, total control, is 25.87 pence. So that's the difference that we're seeing it, and I think in among that, I mean, up until a couple of years ago, the cheapest single rate tariff for electricity in this area would have been about, you know, you could have got something for about 13 pence, so relatively cheap. And then what we've got is that being the heating rate if you've got electric heating. And I think we're about, electricity is around 3 times the price of gas now. For us, it's been as high as 4 times the price of gas. But how does that compare? I wonder what you experience.
For gas,
Aye.
well, I'm not pretty much. What do you mean gas? You mean natural gas or gas or gasoline, petrol, or?
Sorry, yeah, like if people had gas heating, would the unit price be a significant?
Oh, the gas heating. Okay, I don't know. I don't heat with gas, and I didn't look it up. But there's not that much people using natural gas to heat. There's some, but it's not a big market. It used to be a big market, and one was cheaper than electricity. It was really cheaper than electricity, but not anymore. Now, natural gas is, I mean, anything that's hydrocarbon is, oh boy, exploding everywhere, even here. So now people are really jumping into electricity for heating. And,
yeah, but that's interesting that when you say the difference there is that we unfortunately have this situation, and I was contacted by a BBC researcher short ago who was questioning where you would find electricity that wasn't tied to the price of gas, and I said that I thought that Quebec probably would be an area that you could highlight, and I sent her the piece that I'd written, and I sent her an internet link too. But when the program came on, it was a Radio 4 program called Costing the Earth, and she'd obviously decided to ignore that bit of information. I couldn't understand why, but it maybe didn't suit their needs at the time. But basically, your electricity price is completely independent of international gas prices, obviously.
well, it's not just in Quebec, it's all over Canada.
Over Canada,
yeah, we're the cheapest in North America, okay, because of or 99% hydro. So we're really cheap because of that. But if you look for Canada, not United States, but for Canada, they're not influenced that much by what's happening elsewhere in the world with the energy market. Because we have a lot of hydro, we're not the only one. Manitoba has hydro, British Columbia has hydro. Well, Alberta, they have a lot of wind and solar, but they're sitting on the tar sands and they have a lot of oil. And Saskatchewan's the same thing. So they're not too influenced by the outside market of the cost. So we're very lucky here in Canada to not be influenced by the high cost of energy right now. We're being hit for the rest of it, like everyone else. I mean, the food and all the rest of it is really going bonkers. But for energy costs, we're very lucky.
Yeah. Okay. Now that's certainly interesting, and yeah, I don't know if there was a sort of a line that they were trying to take in that program that meant that they didn't want to go down that route, but I was a bit miffed when they did, when they had the sort of at least given it a mention. They looked at other European countries, I think, but they didn't go out with the EU sort of areas. Yeah, does anybody else have any questions or any points to make? I saw that we had a drop off for somebody who had been timed out. Oh, Fiona Graham. Fire away.
Oh, Fiona,
Yeah,
okay.
can I ask about a little bit more about decarbonising your transport? And you spoke a little bit about electric cars, but what about other modes of transport? Could you maybe go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I have an electric bike. Start with me. I don't own a car anyway. I'm with just to give you an example of what's happening here in Montreal. Okay, we have the metro, and we're converting. The city is very much converting all the buses into hybrids or electric. Now there's more and more electric, 100% electric buses. And we're finishing a project because we have a lot of catching up to do with as for public transport here in Montreal. You have to understand that North America is very car-centric culture, okay? Not just the Americans, but whole America, where like everybody wants their car, okay? And it's not very public transportation centric minding people here, but this is changing very fast and very fast, because the cities are completely congested with cars, regardless if it's ICE cars or EVs, okay? There's too many of them anyway. So we have to change our mindset of the way we travel around big centers like Montreal or other cities like Quebec City or Ottawa, next, not too far from here. So yes, there's a big, we're pushing here to change the way we move ourselves around the city. Outside of Montreal, when you're in rural regions, well, they don't have any choice. They have to have a car, okay? There's not that much, there's no public transportation. So and we don't have, when I was in Scotland for 3 weeks, okay, it was what I admired the most, not just in Scotland, but everywhere in Europe, because I was also in Europe and France and all. You have trains all over the place, okay? And we don't have that. We have trains, but not that much. And they've always been talking about doing this, the fast, the TGV, the transit, the TGV train, okay? They've been talking about it for, I don't know, 40 years or something. There's nothing done yet, okay? Zero, just to give you a mindset of everybody's still like traveling with their cars and buses to go between cities. That's about what we have. But it's starting to change, okay? We are finishing a project here that's called the REM. It's a Réseau Électrique Métropolitain. It's a vast project. They're doing some catching up, okay? It's a vast project here in Montreal to relay all the suburbs with electric trains. Now we're gonna resemble a little bit more people like you in Scotland, and like when I was at the Edinburgh, I was at the train station, the central train station there, and I was really impressed to see all this. I said, man, we should have this here in Montreal. I mean, we don't have those type of transportation. It's really cool to have that in your country. And we're going to have this. The first, it's going to come into service in 2024. They're building the thing really fast. And it's only catching up, okay? We're not innovating here. We're just catching up things that we should have done a long time ago. So it's transforming, but it's getting momentum. That's what I could say. It's getting momentum here in the province.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that we seem to hear a lot of complaints about our train service, and you know, it gets a bad press sometimes, but yeah, we're maybe doing something right, and we certainly had a discussion at the conference we were at the other week about re-railing some of the areas of the northeast of Scotland that had been rolled back in the 60s, I guess. But yeah, it certainly needs to happen and get folk off roads right enough. So I guess that the underlying sort of reason for wanting to know about the nationalisation is, you know, we're view to things on this side of the Atlantic. But if you were trying to give advice to an area like Orkney or Scotland on where to start, even though it's a massive project, would you recommend you know, starting to do some feasibility work around that?
Yeah, that's how we did it. I mean, we started by imagining ourselves buying the whole network and how much it's going to cost. I mean, you have to evaluate what's it's worth, because that's the first thing you have to do. Okay, when they've done the first nationalization, okay, I didn't went into the really small details, but what they did is they mandated two, I think it was two engineers, I try to remember exactly, but what they did is they've done a inventory of everything, the equipment of Montreal Light, Heat and Power. They wanted to know what was installed and how much that's worth, okay, today, and the state of the network also, and the state of the distribution network, the grid, okay, what's the state of it? Is it the top shape, or is it really, it needs to be refurbished? So see, if it needs to be refurbished, when it's worth more, less, I mean, it's worth less. So you have to go and do the inventory of the whole network, I mean, everything. Then you have the value of it, and that's where you start to imagine yourself, okay, it's worth 1 billion, or just throwing a number here, it's worth 1 billion. So can we, is it feasible to buy the thing? And we're going to control the whole distribution network. That's it. No, that's how you, at least you start small, okay? And because buying production, in your case, it's not like hydro, okay? You're buying gas generating, and then sometimes, I don't know, they're somewhere else very far, because your network is really a mishmash of all kinds of generating stuff. It's not centralized like it was easier in the province of Quebec, because there were only dams, and we're buying dams, okay, and they were there. I mean, you just buy them, the generating, but now today you have wind farms, and you have solar farms, and they're all installed, they're scattered around, and there are different companies like us. It was different companies also, but and you have to have a government that's willing to have the courageous decision. They have to be courageous of doing this. I mean, and it's gonna be a hard sell. Oh boy, that's really gonna be a hard sell, because energy, there's so much money now. We all know how the profits they're making, outrageous profits they're making, and they're gonna say, well, this is worth, because they're gonna take the value of the market. And for me, what's happening, that's my personal opinion, but they're just hiking the prices for no reason. I mean, especially renewables. I can understand maybe if it's generated by hydrocarbons, and even so that, okay, but renewables, it doesn't come out that expensive, the output of a wind farm or solar energy, okay? So it's very difficult to explain the price you're paying when it ends up in your home, okay? I don't know, really. There's something wrong there, really.
I think we definitely have a broken system, but I guess that, yeah, get into that stage where we can even talk about reform, and it seems a long way away with a UK government that's acting the way it is at the moment, and talking about fracking and issuing oil licenses and things like that. We seem a far distance away from having a picture of the energy future that we thought we were going to have maybe even 10 years ago. It probably looked a bit simpler.
That's the other thing I wanted to tell, is that here in Canada, each province are a sovereign of their energy politics, okay? It's not centralized in Ottawa. It's not the Canadian government who decides how much you're going to pay. Not at all, okay? It's each provinces. And if I take the example of us and project it onto the UK, but it should be each country, okay? Scotland should own their own politics in energy, like England should own their own politics in energy, and the Wales, okay, should own their own politics of energy. And you just have a federal, like the government of Canada, the way they influence energy is more the politics of interconnections between the provinces and international connections also. That's the territory of the federal government. But inside the country, for each provinces, they're sovereign of their own politics. And that should be the same thing for the UK or any country anyway. Okay, it should be like that. At least you're controlling really well your production, especially the production.
Yeah. A few of the Graham's asking, would this have a record of the energy assets in Scotland? All right, yeah. So that we'll maybe have some idea of what we've got in terms of what's dotted around the country, indeed. But yeah, as you say, there's a big job to be done. Well, unless anybody else has got any further questions, I'm conscious that we're at 9 o'clock, and I've got a collie dog that's been round here.
I forgot. Yeah, it's later out there.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
But no, I mean, like that's been a fascinating evening again, and I'd like to thank you very much, Patrick, for taking the time
to
put together that presentation and to answer the questions so well, and give us a lot of food for thought as we build a case for whether it's independence for Scotland or looking at whether Orkney could do something with its grid, as a pilot or something like that. I think there's a lot of energy brains in Orkney that could be pointed in the right direction. So yeah, no, I saw a few hands of applause going up there, and yeah, I think that's. And there's even some thank you in French there if you want to check the chat there, Patrick. That's yeah, and thanks to everybody.
Now, merci beaucoup.
Bienvenue.
Très intéressant.
Yeah.
Merci.
Oh, that's brilliant. No, very much appreciated, and hopefully it'll not be the last time that we chat over this, because I think there's plenty to be learned either way. Okay, so yeah, thanks very much, folks, for signing up, and look forward to seeing some of you maybe in person as we progress with the campaign. Don't be scared to show face again at your meetings or if we have street stalls, and I think we've been talking about trying to get a social event together at some point, just to put names to faces. So yeah, but thank you, Patrick.
Okay, my pleasure. It was really fun, and I really like your country. I mean, I was there for 3 weeks, and boy, I was overwhelmed by the culture. And the funny part is the drivers, they're so polite. I mean, they're not Latin like here, right? Oh boy. Yeah, it was fun.
That's good.
Au revoir. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Good night, folks. Thanks very much.
Bonsoir.
Bye.
Bonne nuit.
Bonsoir.